So the next part of the class, basically the whole rest of the semester, we're going to go joint by joint, body part by body part, through the whole body, and we're going to talk about the anatomy of each joint, some bones and muscles and tendons and ligaments, and then after that we'll talk about the different rehabilitation exercises that you can do for that joint or body segment, as well as some modalities that you could use. Um, and we'll try and talk a little bit about each phase of the rehab process and what that looks like at that joint. Um, and if you already read it, this is all kind of gearing up towards your rehab project that is due at the end of the semester. So basically, you're going to pick an injury, and you're going to tell us everything from the anatomy of the injury to what you would do in the inflammatory phase, what you would do for range of motion, what you would do for strengthening, for return to play, all that stuff, and describe the tissue healing process during those parts. So as we start going body part by body part, think about what you want to do your project on. You're going to have to do a little bit of research to figure out, what injury you're going to do. We'll talk about a little bit about different injuries, but really we're just going to focus on the anatomy. So you'll have to research the injury itself a little bit, and then use what we talk about here to go through that rehab process. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to message me. Okay, so starting with the elbow, we are going to, let's see if I can get this to click to the next one. It's not going to let me move forward. All right, well, let's see if this works. There we go. All right, so starting with the elbow, anatomy of the elbow. All right, first diagram here. Don't worry about all the terms. We're not going to have to learn everything. However, I will point out some of the more important ones. Okay, so the elbow is made up of the humerus. Okay, the humerus is in both of these top diagrams. The humerus is your upper arm, and it connects with the ulna. The ulna is right here in this diagram, as well as here. And the ulna is on the inside of your forearm. So if you were to hold your arms out and feel that bone on the inside of your forearm, that would be your ulna. Okay, so some important parts in the humerus, we have the medial epicondyle. Okay, this is the humerus looking from the front side. Here's the medial epicondyle. Okay, if you were looking from the back, like you were standing behind someone and looking at their upper arm, this would be the medial epicondyle of the humerus. Okay, and then on the outside, you have the lateral epicondyle, and again, from the back side, there's the lateral epicondyle. Okay, if you were feeling this on your own arm, on the inside of your elbow, you could feel that bony prominence with your finger. That bony prominence is the medial epicondyle, and that bony prominence on the outside is that lateral epicondyle. Okay, and these are important because they're big attachment sites for muscles and ligaments. Okay, and then in the ulna, an important spot is the olecranon, and we can see the olecranon right here. Very prominent part of the ulna. And when your arm goes into extension, the olecranon sits in this olecranon fossa right here on the humerus. And so it kind of locks into place. And that's important to know when you think about elbow injuries that occur, especially when the arm is in extension, falling on an outstretched arm, outstretched hand. When that olecranon locks into that olecranon fossa, it can easily get fractured or something if it shifts out of place. Okay, so those are important to know about. We also want to know, here's the radius, and the radius is the outside of our forearm. Okay, and the head of the radius is this round notch at the top. And that part is going to roll on the ulna when we twist our forearm, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Okay, but for now, we want to know the ulna, we want to know the radius, we want to know the humerus, we want to know the lateral and medial epicondyle, and we want to know the radial head, or the head of the radius. Okay, moving on to the next slide. Okay, this is basically the same pictures we were just looking at, but now we have all of the ligaments on top. Okay, and you can tell that at the elbow, there's a lot of ligaments going on, and so it creates kind of a capsule. Okay, so if you think about a dislocation happening or any kind of shift in those bones, all of these ligaments are going to, especially in a dislocation, all these ligaments are going to tear. Okay, and so that's why those injuries can be so painful and so difficult to come back from, because all of these ligaments are going to tear that whole capsule. Okay, but specifically, we want to know on the medial side, the inside of your elbow, here's the ulnar collateral ligament. Okay, and we would abbreviate that with UCL. And it goes from that medial epicondyle that we talked about, and it goes down to the ulna. Okay, and then same thing on the other side, we have the radial collateral ligament, and that's going to attach from the radius and go up to the lateral epicondyle. Okay, and those are both going to provide integrity and stability for your joint so that it doesn't go side to side. Okay, and that's going to really hold that elbow joint together. Okay, UCL, ulnar collateral ligament, might be familiar. A lot of baseball players get that injury. Okay, the UCL tears because of the stress of throwing a baseball. Could happen in any sport, could happen especially in any overhead sport, water polo, softball, baseball, javelin throwing, but very prominent in baseball pitchers. Okay, and that is also referred to as Tommy John injury or Tommy John surgery, and that's when baseball players get this ligament repaired. They take either a graft from their own body or from another person's body, and they reattach that ligament back together because it's torn. Okay, moving down into this diagram, this is the medial side, the inside of the elbow, and you can see from this view that the ulnar collateral ligament, see this here, is actually split into 3 bands: anterior, posterior, and transverse band. So it's kind of like a big fan, a big band of ligaments that attach that inside of the elbow. And that's why it's such a big deal when it tears. But you don't need to know necessarily the 3 different types. Just know that it goes from the medial epicondyle to the ulna, and it's very prominent in overhead injuries, especially baseball. Okay, and then on this last diagram, you can see the lateral collateral ligament or the radial collateral ligament. Those terms are interchangeable. Okay, radial collateral, talking about the radius, lateral collateral, just saying that it's the outside of the elbow. And there it is going from the radius up into the humerus. Okay. Okay, so here's the elbow again, but with the muscles laid over the top. Okay, and we don't need to learn all the muscles again, but there are some important ones to know. Okay, this diagram right here is showing us from the front of the arm. If you were in front of a person looking at their arm and their elbow. Okay, and you can see this big, bulging, wide-based muscle. That's the bicep. Okay, and then up here it's attached to the shoulder, and when it comes down and attaches at the elbow, you can see it splits into 2 different tendons. Okay, so this is the bicep tendon, and so is that other piece, is that bicep tendon, and that's why it's called the bicep, because it splits into 2 spots. So that's the front of the arm. On the back of the arm over here, we have the triceps, and you can see it's kind of 2 different fan-based muscles, and then actually down at the elbow down here, it's going to split into 3 insertion sites, and that's why it's called the tricep. Okay, and this diagram down here we see two other muscle groups that we want to know about. We have our supinator, okay, and I'll show you in a minute what supination is, but this is the muscle that does supination. This is when we open our hands up like we're holding a bowl of soup, and it attaches from the lateral epicondyle on the outside of our arm down into the radius. Okay, and then the pronator teres, or the pronator muscle group, it also wraps around onto the radius, but it attaches up at the medial epicondyle. And so if you think about if that muscle were to contract, it would cause your arm to spin or flip over. And so we call the pronator, if you want to think about the motion that it does, it's pouring a bowl of soup out. So you're holding that bowl of soup, you're in supination, that supinator muscle is turned on. And then when you pour that bowl of soup out, this flips over and the pronator muscle turns on. And again, I'll show you with a video in a minute. Okay. Last diagram, I like this one because you can really see how the olecranon process of the ulna sits into that olecranon fossa on the humerus and really locks into place over there. Okay, you can also see from this view a lot more of the supinator muscle. It looks like it's small over here, but it's actually a lot bigger than you could see. Okay, moving on. And here's with the skin over the top of all that, so we can see, here's someone's arm. Here's the triceps on the back side. Here's the biceps on the front side. Okay, lateral epicondyle here. Olecranon process down on the bottom there. Another part of the anatomy, good to know, there's an olecranon bursa, a fluid-filled sac that reduces the friction from the tricep tendon as it comes around the olecranon. And if you were to hit the olecranon really hard, that bursa would kind of blow up into a big, like golf ball or tennis ball sized fluid-filled swelling. So you can have an olecranon bursitis when you hit that bursa. Okay, from the front side of the arm, there's that bicep we were talking about, medial epicondyle. The lateral epicondyle is out here. And then from the back side, there's the tricep. Olecranon process would be right here. Tricep tendon comes right through there. And then, yeah, we have our lateral epicondyle, our medial epicondyle. Okay. Well, that's where we're going to stop this video. This is just the anatomy of the elbow. In the next one, I will show you different exercises for range of motion, strengthening, and progressing back to play.